Hello and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan, and I'm so delighted to be here with you. We have an exciting show, The State of America. What's next? I have my co host along with me.
And good evening, everybody. What a way to, if you would, to conclude this time together as we're coming down to less than 43 days before the election. And there's lots of things to unpack and a lot of things to understand. So we're looking forward to this show tonight.
Absolutely. Dr. J, this state of America is so on edge and uneasy because, so much is at risk. We're dealing with mental illness. We have the gun violence. We have families that are displaced. Finances are being, ripped to shreds actually because of the economy, the price gouging of apartments. It's so much going on. Then we have to decide who the next president is going to be of the United States. America is in a state of actually depression.
Exactly. Yeah, we are really going through some things right about now in this country. We are witnessing things happening, and I'm telling you, not only depression, but even anxiety. Because in one sense, we're being told things. Sometimes we're being told things that we don't see, and other times we're seeing things that are not being said. And it's and so we have a lot to unpack. We have a lot to look at, and in many ways, we can't afford to get caught up with the rhetoric. We need to be really in tune with what's truly going on.
Absolutely. And, we've been talking about government the last couple of weeks and, trying to get people to understand what that means and what that looks like. We have the local government, the state, and the
Yeah.
federal. So these are different levels. And I have a special guest on tonight. Her name is Eula Murray Hylton, and she's running for commission seat number 4 here in Florida. Eula, good evening. How are you?
I am well. Good evening.
One
Yes.
of the things we've been trying to get people to understand and realize is that our local community is who really serves us, hands on serves us. It's not though the people in Washington, D.C., it's our local community that we need to be concerned about. And the elections are coming up, and a lot of people won't vote for their local government, like seats like yours, because they don't understand it. Could you explain why a commission seat is important in local communities?
It's very important. We always use the old adage that if your garbage doesn't get picked up, are you going to call Washington, D.C.? No, you're not. What happens on a local level is very important and it affects your life each and every day in your community. So it doesn't help also that on most ballots, your local election is like on the last page. So I encourage everyone to do their due diligence and really look at the candidates and make decisions based on what their platform is and what if it's aligned with what you and your family need. That's very important because we have a lot of issues in the city, and those issues can only be addressed by someone who is willing to put in the work and really has the residents on their mind and are willing to serve the people. And that's what we need. And as you and your host were saying earlier, the nation as a whole is in fatigue and anxiety and depression over this election because these stakes are so high. And it's the same in the local election. The stakes are high.
And yet it's still, and we see it around us. But I think so many times, because we hear so many things thrown at us, we don't really take the time to really unpack. There are all kind of catchphrases and rhetoric that's out there. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Well, we have to put things into context as well. What was going on in this country 4 years ago? What has taken place in that time? What is this whole thing about cycles and different things such as that? At the end of the day, so many things get caught up in the wash. The real question that we should be asking ourselves is, where are we headed? Where are we headed? What are the things that are going to put us in a better position as far as quality of life, as far as the things that will make a difference in our everyday lives? And so many times that message is lost in rhetoric, is lost inside of so many other things. And so I'm not sure if people are voting pocketbooks this year, or people are thinking about, futuristically what happens, because either way it puts, we have so many issues to look at. And on a local level, people oftentimes overlook the impact and how important local government is inside of those everyday decisions, inside of those things that affect us right at home. And we have to find a way to raise it. I often think people really don't understand what their elected officers really do.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the stakes are high, just like in the national election. The local representatives that you vote in are going to shape your city for the next 4 years at least. And we have to be intentional about the planning economically, as well as socially, as well as looking at the pocketbook issues, as Valerie mentioned earlier, because everyone is feeling the strain, and look at the family as a whole, because all of our residents want safe neighborhoods. They want definitely for the youth to have a future. We can lose a whole generation if we don't take care of our youth, both educational wise, socially, and even mentally, as Valerie alluded to. Mental illness is a real thing, not only with adults, but with young people also.
Exactly.
So there's a lot at stake. And I feel that we have to be intentional and really just look not 1 year out, but are we going to be better 4 years out? And we have to put ourselves on a path to success.
One of the things that I love about you, Eula, is that you just didn't show up on the scene. You've been working in the community and doing things especially with the youth. You have your nonprofit, the Today Project, where every year, throughout the year, you're giving, you're working in the fields, that, as people would say, um, trying to empower the community, because you know that they are the next generation coming up, and we're going to rely on them to look out for us as we enter our senior years and be able to generate income and funds, because we want those teens that are young adults that are growing up not to leave our community, but to stay in the community to help build it. So talk about why you started working with the youth and why you created your nonprofit and the different works that you've been doing, because you do insurance as well. So you're always empowering some way or another.
Well, I think when it comes to the youth, it was just a natural thing for me. And I realized as I had my own son and he was growing up and getting to that age of 12 or 13, a lot of parents were just assuming that, okay, they're out of the formative years and they're out of diapers. And so I don't have to pay as much attention. And I realized that a lot of our young people were latchkey kids and going home and not really interacting the way they should with the family unit, as well as not really having guidance. And that's not necessarily the fault of the parents, because some parents have had to hold down one or two jobs, or it's a single parent family. So I'm not criticizing from that point of view, but they just needed something to fill that vacuum, someone to talk to them about real life issues, and someone to also acknowledge them and say, yes, you can. Because every child needs to have that. They have to have the reassurance that maybe even if they're struggling in school, or even if there's problems at home, that they can overcome it. And I think we have a lot of kids that have become despondent. Oh, I got in trouble, and so my life is over, and I ain't ever gonna amount to anything. And I was really passionate about showing them that you can be somebody if you put your mind to it.
Absolutely, and that's one of the areas you thrive in, which is very important, and also your service to the community. Talk about that as well.
Well, in terms of my service to community, when as an HOA president, a lot of my residents were bringing different issues to me, and I'm the kind of person, you bring an issue to me, and I'm going to work as much as I can to get it resolved one way or the other. And it doesn't always work out that you can resolve 100% of the issues, but I have over the years, the last 5 or 6 years, been able to do a lot of things that I didn't think I could get done. It took me 3 years just to get a pavilion built in one of the parks in my neighborhood. It took me a while to actually get certain code issues and bring up the appearance of the neighborhood, not just in my neighborhood, but other neighborhoods. And then, most importantly, when it looked like our school system was really failing our children, it took a while for us to actually reach out to the school board and really say, look, we have a 5 alarm fire here. We need to engage our kids and we are failing them. And I'm happy to say that I see a glimmer of hope with that. We have a new school superintendent who I've been talking to, and I'm just hopeful for the future because we have to pour into our children. And I'm going to continue on that road, definitely. I
Is
also feel that what bothers me absolutely the most is that disconnect with the communication between the city and the community. Very often, the community doesn't know what's going on and the things that are affecting their neighborhood. And everybody doesn't come to commission meetings or even HOA meetings, but we have to get engaged because when the city brings along its residents and shares information with them and makes them part of the conversation, it's powerful. Things get done.
and that's why we need local government. And those of you that are looking and listening to us now, Google who's in your community. Google who's running for office. You Google everything else. You're on social media all the time, but looking at things that are going on nationally. If you look nationally, 12 million people nationwide between the ages of 18 and 25 are suffering with mental illness where they feel depression or suicidal. So this is a mass amount of our young adults that are going through this crisis right now. And we need people in our local government that are able to address this situation by bringing in, individuals that are suited to be able to help cultivate these young people to embrace a larger vision of themselves. Because obviously they can't do it by themselves. There are a lot of them that are in single parent homes, and then the ones that have both their parents in their homes. The parents are so busy trying to make ends meet because everything is so high, from groceries to electric to water to garbage disposal, clothing, everything is out of range for a lot of the American people. So we need to be proactive in what we do in our community by voting and going out and researching who's there and participating in community events so that you can familiarize yourself with individuals, get up close and personal.
That's so important for that to happen. And however, I do believe this, that, coming from that era, of when we talk about Voting Rights Act, and I think most people know I was born and raised in Selma, Alabama. And so even as a kid, everything about life was about voting. Remember those times. Over the years, there are many people that have become discouraged about voting. Now, that doesn't make it right, but that means that there's a lot more work to do about explaining why this is so important. And I think that we've lost that for a great deal of people. They don't see it, and it doesn't help when we've had the number of things that happen definitely over the last 8 to 10 years. I mean, all kind of voter suppression techniques and making people feel like their vote doesn't count, and all kind of things to discourage people from voting. And people throw up their hands and say, "Well, I'm not going to vote." I know that when I am out there talking to people, and I'm doing this a lot, even when I'm connecting with churches and we're having conversation in the community with a lot of people, this is what has happened. You go back and you think about the election, the national election of 2020, the largest turnout ever voting in this country. How is it rewarded? It's rewarded with massive voter suppression techniques to stop people from doing exactly what you want them to do, vote.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the disadvantages for elderly people, seniors. Think about the disadvantage for those individuals that oftentimes benefited from what? Early vote, from mail-in voting. Think about for longer periods of time of voting, before the election. All of those things have been slashed, have been diced. People have been purged from the voting roll simply because we got laws now. If you didn't vote in the last election, you're purged. You got to keep re-voting all the time. Who's to say the help that they had 4 years ago is there to help them now, to guide them and navigate them through that process? So the real issue is, why is that an issue? Is it really because people are stealing votes? No, it's because of the fact it is to discourage people from voting. So I find myself trying to convince people who are well able to go and register to vote. And the number one question, for what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. They're being discouraged. I find myself really trying to encourage them, because we're seeing things happening even to this point now. The state of Georgia, how do you pull crazy stuff? We want every vote, hand ballot count in 2024, where we have all kind of electronic devices to do everything else. Listen, we got electronic folks checking you out, machine checking you out at Walmart and stores, but we're going to tell people that they got to wait until every ballot is counted by hand. Distractions, discouragement. Those things are happening, and a lot of people are giving in to that, and they're saying, I'm not going through all that to vote. And yet it's still, they've got to understand this thing. Why is it's the most fault thing in our democracy is voting? Because it's one of the only things that allow your voice to count. If you're 18 years old and you're registered to vote, it's the only thing in our society that says, listen here, you may be John Q. Public, you may be poor, you may be whatever, but you get a chance to lend your voice and your choice to something. And we see the suppression that's trying to deny that. People cannot give in. They cannot give in. So that means that we have to really educate from the pulpit. We need to educate from the schools. We need to educate from every place why it is so important. Then the other thing that we have to do, we have to get people in there that say, listen here, why are we discouraging people from voting? And that's what voting suppression does. Tell me, how does it make sense to say we're not going to allow you to have water, and you're standing in the voting line and you can't have water passed out to you? Tell me, how does that benefit and support people exercising this great right to vote? Tell me. I've talked to legislators, a group of us clergy talked to legislators statewide just a few years ago before these things was changed. And we asked them, why was all these sweeping changes happening? They could not give us a real answer. All things were based upon suspicion. Well, this could happen, but do you have any evidence of it happening? No, but it could be. We keep moving the goalposts. And so what I'm trying to say is that the new generation of voters, the people that are eligible, we have to be able to reach them. And kind of like what you were saying there, the fact that we have to meet people where they are. They have to see why they are so important in the process. And when people don't see their own relevance, and when they don't see where they really matter, they tend to stay home. But they suffer, because to not vote is to vote.
Exactly. That's what I said. If you want real change, you have to make your voice heard. Otherwise, you're going to be put in a position. And I don't make any apologies. I've talked with young Black men, and I've said to them, I said, you have to think about the judicial system, because voting affects the judicial system, as we have
Absolutely.
seen to the
Absolutely.
highest court. And you have to decide how you want to be treated if something happens to you and you get stopped by law enforcement, or if you um, go out and are wrongly accused of something. How are you going to react, and how is the system going to treat you? This is a reality of life. And so voting, before I was even guilty of that, when I first started voting, I didn't pay that much attention to the judges. I just looked at the candidates and
Yeah.
everything. But now when I vote, we have a great thing called Google. You can Google them, see what their history is, what they stand for, and then you can make an informed decision. And every one of our children is going to be affected some way or some other on one end or the other. And
That-
also, as we've seen, which is also sad, we have seen no ease up in terms of gun violence in our nation, on a local level as well as a national level. And that also has to be addressed.
Right. It's 24 mass shootings here in Florida that's been in the schools, and 385 nationwide of mass shootings. And 46 out of all of those have been children, young adults, innocent lives. Let me say to you, people, there is more going on than people influxing into this country through the border. The
yes.
border is not the main thing. Things were going on before the borders were opened up. Long before the borders were up, but we were having problems. And, as I said, our housing, people can't afford, we're Americans and we can't afford to rent an apartment. We're priced out of our own neighborhoods. We need to vote in our local elections. We have to vote because we want to keep insurance. They're talking about here in Florida getting rid of Social Security. Every state has their own laws that fall under the umbrella of whatever those local cities are. So that's why we must be proactive in all that we do as it relates to this local election, as well as the global election that we're going throughout the US.
Yeah, and that's where people have to get involved in, because if you look at it, one of the things that we're seeing across the board, and particularly here in Palm Beach County, we're dealing with a great homeless issue, a great homeless issue. But then we take the step, somehow or another, our moral code is not matching our laws. I mean, something is wrong where people now that are homeless, nowhere to live. And these aren't necessarily what we call illegal immigrants. And we need to understand there's a lot of more people that are homeless. I'm talking about working poor, people that are living in their cars, sleeping in their cars on Walmart parking lots and things. And now in our county,
and being imprisoned.
yeah, in our county, people can be arrested. They're arrested for sleeping in their car. They're arrested now because of the fact they're outside of buildings. They are arrested. You can't. So hold up, we're going to put you in jail because you're homeless. We're going to do those things because you're homeless.
And you're an American citizen. You are
Right.
legal to be here in this state, in this country. You are legal, and going to jail because you're sleeping in your car because you can't afford to pay $2,000 a month for rent.
That's a real issue. And the face of homelessness has changed.
Yes.
We have working poor
Working
that
poor.
that sleep in their car in the Walmart plaza, and then get up and go to work each
Go to
and
work.
every day, and still, as you said, Val, cannot afford a place to rent. And a new set of homeless people are really concerning me, and that's our seniors, because a lot of them who retired, bought condos and thought, okay, I can afford this. I'll be able to afford it in our retirement. That is a real issue that I'm concerned about. because we are literally going to have people in their golden years when they should be kicking back and not worrying about anything, who could face homelessness because of the whole thing that happened at Surfside that triggered all these assessments. And these people had on a fixed income, sometimes of only $1,000 a month, which is nothing now,
No.
had to find money for the condo dues, for the assessment, for food, and all the other living expenses that are exposed to. And we literally have people, we see it all around, especially when they condemn the buildings that they live in, and these people have to move out and have nowhere to go.
And
That
Eula,
is a
you
crying
said
shame.
something very important. These are, and just keep in mind, this is the Sunshine State. This is where people come to retire. They
Exactly.
worked all their lives from different states, and they come here to retire in the Sunshine State. And they bought these condos that they've, sold their homes and came and bought condos and duplexes and stuff, and they paid them off cash. But because of the needs assessment, the HOA fees and stuff, it has taxed them even more than they're willing and able to pay on their Social Security. Now you're talking about taking away Social Security and cutting Social Security. So where does that leave the seniors? Okay, so we got this. We're here. We're here in the middle, but then you got the young adults that are trying to make it through school, afraid and terrified that one of their friends may pull a gun out there or stab or kill them. Then you have the seniors who can't live in their communities, and then they can't even get aid and get food and help get financial assistance because their electric bills and their garbage bills and all that is so high. Their insurances have gone up because of the hurricanes, where we have somebody that don't believe that there's a global warming going on. So we have to be proactive and invested in ourselves because we are our future.
Yeah.
And there's something that people don't realize, as you acknowledged earlier, about young people are my thing. So I had a little conversation with three of them the other day. And believe you me, the top of mind is, how are we ever going to be able to move out of our parents' home? And these kids are all working. They're all working. And they don't see a path forward where they will be self-sufficient and will be able to own a modest home, just a little home, nothing extravagant, not a mansion. And that concerns them because they feel, how am I ever going to be able to support a family if I get married and I start a family? And it is a stressor. So when we're thinking, okay, it's only the adults over a certain age that are worried about it, no, our younger generation is very concerned about it because they want to have a quality of life just like we had growing up, and were able to purchase a home and live in a family home. And that is very disturbing, that, and gives young people, well, ain't nothing going to change if I vote. But I am telling you, nothing is going to change if you don't vote.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Nothing changed until it changes. And but we have to be that agent of change inside of it. And one of the things that is really sad is that we allow things to get out of hand in this nation. I mean, we talk about price gouging. Some of the things that should be implemented, especially in this state here, should have been. You're going to tell me we can't regulate rent? We can't regulate what is too much? You think about this, and I witnessed this myself. A person moves into just like even rental property. They move into an apartment or development. Initially, they go through a background check. They go through all these things, verify income and all those things there, and they pay, and that's where they are. But over the last several years, what has happened? When it's time to renew, the landlords, these people are raising rent, sometimes doubling the amount. People have gone from $1,400 a month to $2,200 in 1 year. Guess what? They never came back and verified your income. They never came back and verified none of that. What is it that gives them the right to just raise it like that without considering that your cost of living go up? Is your wages, are you earning wages or none of that? And somewhere along the line, we didn't cap it. And so I'm watching fights with HOAs. I am. In many ways, you look at communities that are drying up. You look at communities where people rents are still going up, but they got broken things there. Pools and amenities are not working, none of those things. But there's no justification why everything keeps going on. Somewhere along the line, America is going to have to deal with its greed. It's going to have to deal with the fact of, are we pricing people out of the ability to stay? So one thing feeds another. Then people become very upset about immigrants coming here. Well, the nation was built on immigrants. If you're talking about illegal immigration, then let's create a pathway to citizenship. Let's do the right things inside of it. But the reality is this. The very thing that people are coming to this country for, the American dream, that dream is not even being realized by the Americans because we're being priced right out of it. You can't live. And you brought up something very important. The average young person today, literally, they go off to college and they don't return. Listen, none of my kids have returned home in Palm Beach County.
Yeah, mine's all gone too.
They can't afford to live here. And they don't want to come live here with dad. And quite frankly, I don't want them to have to either. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But the reality is the fact why. That was a time that we all look forward to, the children being able to enjoy. We pass it on the dream to them. Now that dream looks like it's sputtering. Looks like the fact that it's out of place. People having to live together. I mean, you got 2 and 3 families having to live together just to make it and to be able to thrive and survive. That's not the America that we talked about. That's not the dream. We don't want to look at greed. We don't want to look at many things that have destroyed very much the infrastructure of who we are. Then we take those type of things and you wonder who's thinking about it. Tell me how cutting Social Security, who does that help? How does that help the economy? How does that help?
It doesn't.
It doesn't make sense. How do you say to people who have paid into Social Security all their lives, and I'm getting afraid because of the fact, hey, could it be that I've paid into this all my working years? And when it's time for me to be able to draw from it, it no longer exists.
Yes, and you talk about mental health. People are having mental breakdowns because they fear what they don't know or understand. So the reality is there may be no reality of hope.
And that's a sad statement for America. It is. But I feel also that greed has played a huge role in this. And even in my industry, in the insurance industry, we should have addressed insurance costs over 5 years ago. Yes. A lot of my colleagues saw this was coming. We knew that it was going to put pressure on the insurance market and that people carriers would move out of Florida, and they have. And the choices have become less. And we knew this was happening. It was there. And our state government refused to take it up until it became literally national news. And then we better look into this a little bit. And by then it was too late. And so now we have a system. I told people, don't look for your insurance costs to go down because that boat has sailed. And every time we have a storm warning, like we're going to have one this week, right? We hold our collective breath and say, let there not be a lot of damage because we know what the implications are for our next insurance bill. And that's a reality. And so, it's justice delayed or action delayed has consequences. And the consequences of not paying attention to certain things, which everyone could see, everyone could feel, we're living that now. And that's what makes it even more important that we have the right people that are looking out for their residents, their constituents, locally, statewide, and on a national level. We are at a time and a crossroads in America where we can't afford to mess this up. We have to decide what kind of nation we want to be. And if we want to get back to the part of having everyone getting along, being a true democracy and thriving and moving forward, we have to have the right people to lead us to that path.
You said something so important. As recently as today, well, I was doing some shopping just to change auto insurance and just even renter's insurance. And I was told by the agency that I was looking at, so hold up, we can't give you a quote right now because of the fact of the impending weather. So we can't bind anything right now. And I'm like saying, what are you kidding? He said, well, we have to find out how this storm is going to affect anything, particularly in your area. And I thought it was quite interesting because of the fact when we start talking about, insurance is something that we can't really do without. We're put in that position. We used to think about life insurance when I was a kid. I used to remember listening to the radio, and every Sunday when they would have these guys come on, a show would be sponsored by the funeral home people or the life insurance people, and they would say, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. That is where we find ourselves today. But when you have insurance that is more than your mortgage, when you have insurance that is outpacing that, when people are dealing with property taxes that have basically enslaved them, you say, what's next? What do? We hear a lot of talk. We hear a lot of rhetoric. We hear a lot of things, but it goes back to a certain portion of this society that is so about greed, that is so about, that they don't care who they squeeze. They don't care. There's no mercy. There's no law. You remember when we went through COVID and they started, there was so many people that tripped over the fact of, they were trying to pass rules and laws that people, can be forgiveness. And even landlords that, no, we're going to get you on this end. And there were still people that was denied. There were people that still found themselves on the bad end of things. And, COVID is over with, but people are still suffering. Yeah. We're still suffering with the residue of it. We're still suffering with so many things that are happening. And it goes back to your point. You've got to really seriously thinking about who is it that you're looking to elect. Don't let them tell you their issues. They need to be listening to you, the community. What are the issues? Here are the issues. This is what we're facing. And I'm reminded, of being touched by the feelings of our infirmity. If you have a person who's not in touch, when they're not in touch, when they can't not relate to what the real struggle is about, I find them having very little empathy and compassion. And it becomes about position for them. It becomes about popularity and fame. It's not by people. And last I checked, government is supposed to be other people, for the people, and by the people.
Most definitely. Most definitely. You can't lose sight of that. And I tell people the only thing that's going to change if I prevail and become the next commissioner is that I will be in a position to help more. Right. That's in my DNA already. I have always been that person. I have always cared about.
From the first time I met you, you had the heart of servanthood. And I applaud you for all the work that you've been doing and are going to do in our communities, and hopefully spread abroad, to different states, and you be the blueprint of what needs to happen in our local communities.
Most definitely. We have to. And, when I go around door to door campaigning and everything and talking to residents, I had one guy that said, do you really believe that Lauderhill has the potential to do better? And I said, of course. We just have to put ourselves on that path, make the right decisions, and we can get there. We have so much to offer. We have such a rich culture in our city that I'm very optimistic, but we need the right people. It's time for the right people to make the right decisions to put us on that path.
The state of America is up to us. It's up to us in our local community. You know, Edmund Burke said, evil prevails when good men and women do nothing. So, are you going to be that person that sits at the sidelines and try to dictate but don't participate? It's up to us. We are democracy. Our vote counts. We need to go out there and vote and make sure that our credentials are in place so that we can vote. You don't want to wait till election day and find
Exactly.
out that your poll location is at a different place and you show up there late and can't get to the poll location you're supposed to be at. You want to make sure that you're still active, that they didn't dismiss you and write you off, that you're deceased. So, you know, it's up to us. If we want to cause the shift and not be stressed out about what's going on in our local communities, not just in Washington, D.C., but our local communities, then we must participate. Everybody has a part to play. And I'm playing my part right now by giving information to motivate and hopefully inspire you to do what's right. And as I said, it's not because illegal immigrants are flooding the border. There's lots going on before they got here. We couldn't afford to live in our communities. We couldn't afford to pay our bills before they got here. So we
Exactly.
must vote.
Exactly. And we have to understand that, this is not about the blame game. This is about the change game. And we have to be willing to be agents of change. And that's what it's all about. When you think about the fact, and I thought that was such a great testimony, you talk about the work that you did without holding an office, without holding a title, meaning the fact this is motivated by you seeing the need. It's motivated by you understanding people's pain and suffering. It's motivated by the fact of you having hope that there's a better day. And so, in other words, I like to look at the fact, show me your faith with your works. You've done the work, and there it is. Now, what you're saying is that if given the opportunity, if you elect me, I'm then given more power and authority to be able to do things where I'm not working alone. I'm making some principle changes. I'm able to affect policies. I'm able to affect things there that can actually benefit even a greater number of people. And people have to understand that, we're no longer waiting for Superman. We have to recognize what's happening in our community. We must recognize those people that are out there doing the work. Those people that are out there when nobody's looking, they're doing the work. Because I think too often what happens is that we see people come along and it just sounds good. It looks like this will be a good thing to do. This is my stepping stone to something else. No, let's see you work before you step. Let's see what you've done before these signs here. And I think that with that in mind, the people that know you, the people that have seen your work, have seen you be selfless, have seen those things, getting your hands dirty, that they will remember those times. Because too often I think that even many elected officials are disconnected from the very people that they're trying to serve. And I think people are looking for, more than anything, people that's willing to have a relationship, people who can relate to their plight and what they're going through, and people that's willing to put their hands to the plow and make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Eula, this has been a blessing always having you on this show. For closing remarks, there's your name there, Eula Murray Hylton. They could look you up on all the social media platforms. So, any closing remarks to encourage and motivate individuals to vote?
Well, I would just say that it is just too much at stake, as we talked to throughout the show, not to vote. But I think it's even more important to elect someone who is not just there to hold an office. You have to be responsive to the needs of the residents that you serve. And that is very, very, very important. And I have looked back on the records of some of our commissioners, and some of them have put in the work and they have done things that have moved the needle. And I've looked at others, not so much. We cannot afford the not so much. You have to show up and show out for the people and roll up your sleeves and do the work. It's not easy. It's long hours. it's doing a lot. It's sacrifice of your personal life, but that's what it takes to really represent your population and really get things done. So
Absolutely.
I just ask people out there, I think I'm the real deal. I've proven I've been in the community for a long time. And most of all, I've shown up when it counted.
Absolutely. And I know for a fact that you have shown up each and every time. Even when I needed you personally, you have always shown up. So we're going to show up for you. So we are democracy. We are the state of America. And if we want change, we have to be the change. As I said, evil prevails when we do nothing. Don't sit and look on the sidelines, hoping and saying, well, things are going to get better if we're not invested in making things get better. It's up to us. We must put in the work. We must do the job. So if this show has been a blessing, please forward it, especially those that are here in this local in Florida, so that you can know that we're on point, we're fighting, we're pressing forward because we want to be the change. State by state, city by city, we are moving forward and we are holding up each other's arms because we're concerned about our children, we're concerned about a middle class, we're concerned about our seniors, but we have to put in the work, we have to vote, we matter, it counts. Thank you for tuning in, and for don't forget to vote because every vote counts.